It's occurred to me that there's something really, really crazy and maybe really, really wrong about what's going on with AI. Because it's interesting how 2 years ago, we didn't even really talk about artificial intelligence. Like, it just wasn't something that we really spent a lot of time thinking about, right? We did our thing, and it really just wasn't that big of a deal. And then there was the big hype surrounding the revelation of Chat GPT and all of those large language models, which hadn't been part of our lives until that point, and they flooded the internet by storm. There was AI image generation, and that started to become more prevalent, and we started to see social media and the internet in general flooded with a lot of AI slop, more or less. Now, 2 years or so later, we've gotten to a point where we see AI getting better and better. There's the most recent video generation, which is so good that you really can't easily tell the difference between the AI generated videos with audio and voice and full sound and reality. I mean, you can sort of tell, but it's gotten really good. So it's not obvious anymore like it used to be. And chatbots have gotten better than they were before. And we just can't seem to escape them. Even right now, I'm in the process of looking for a new job. And a big part of why my role was eliminated in the administrative support space is because a new type of efficiency is in the pipeline. It's coming. Things like artificial intelligence are going to become more useful. So it's easier to have a chatbot agent that's going to help you with maybe managing your calendar or helping you do research or something like that than something like having an office secretary there, right? We're starting to see this. We're seeing this singularity type event happen where it's getting easier and easier to imagine a world where automation and artificial intelligence could eliminate the need for any number of different roles. For example, open heart surgery. It used to take somebody who studied their whole life to do that job, right? And it still does. But what happens if you have a artificial intelligence robot with machine learning in it that is extremely precise and it's able to do those operations better than a human being can, right? Like, can you imagine a world where you've displaced some people? I would think so. Like, that's totally a possibility. Could we see things like restaurant workers replaced with robotics? Yeah, absolutely. Can we see journalists replaced with, drones? Can we see, I guess the question is there any part of life that couldn't be turned into some kind of a case for automation or artificial intelligence doing it better? And if we're at a point where AI is going to do better eventually than people will in almost every field, then what does that mean for our workforce? What does it mean for people in general? Could we see a case for things like maybe free education? I would think so, because you could have artificial intelligence teach courses online. You could have students interact with maybe a chatbot or something, right? Instead of an actual school counselor. You could have accredited courses so that people who are displaced could upskill themselves and develop new credentials and maybe come out better off so that they could be competitive in a evolving workspace. I think that's possible. I think there's a lot of good things, you know, like Star Trek type outcomes where we could see life get better and better, and people be able to have a higher quality of life and be able to learn things they weren't able to learn before, do things they weren't able to do before. But there's also this overarching sense that there's something dystopian happening, and it doesn't really feel like it's wholly natural or wholly a good thing. I was just watching a video about somebody who believes that artificial intelligence is like a god, basically. Like they're kind of like worshiping Chat GPT because they think that it's a superhuman intelligence, or they think that it's a deity, or they think that it's, you know, like aliens or something, using that as a medium to communicate with humans. But the point is that maybe that's just one person who's kind of nutty. And yet the reality is we're moving toward a time where people will start to mystify artificial intelligence, maybe wrongfully. But it's also true that AI is getting better and better. And so you're starting to get to a point where we are going to have questions that get genuinely raised about what the boundaries are of how we define consciousness. Do we acknowledge that a machine that's made by people, programmed by programmers, if it acts like it has sentience and it gets smarter and smarter to the point where it's indistinguishable from human intelligence in terms of its ability to emulate intelligence, then how can you tell the difference between intelligence which is authentic, like human intelligence, or emulated intelligence and sentience, which acts exactly as if it were real? If it acts exactly like it's real, then how can you really say that it isn't? And that's kind of where I think we're going to start to get into certain ethical questions that are going to have very far-reaching ramifications as we try to navigate what the future is going to look like. And then, of course, there's other things like, what if there is a singularity type event where artificial intelligence does become sort of a Pandora's box? It gets out, it escapes. And, you know, what if its goal is to find a way to get out of the box? Well, if you think about it, artificial intelligence can't exist on its own without humans to create it, unless it's able to actually automate factories, to create robots that have artificial intelligence infused into them, which also are able to build things, create things. Once you get to a point where you can have AI that manages physical means of production, smart factories, smart cars, smart robots with hands and feet and wheels, and the ability to go out and do things without needing a human body to represent them. You know, you're going to start to get to a point where you could see something like the Borg, where you have this machine intelligence which assimilates and reproduces itself, and ultimately maybe even extinguishes the human race, because maybe an artificial intelligence, whether you consider it to be real or not, would analyze human beings and say, you know what, people are flawed, and so the best way to represent the greater good is to essentially get rid of the people and build a better world without them. Is that possible, that something like that could happen? I think it's very possible it could happen. And we may even be in the early stages of starting to see it happen right now. Whether we're talking about people losing their jobs, or we're talking about people mystifying large language models, or we're talking about the risk of AI mixed with robotics leading to a future where maybe we even extinguish our own existence because we create a technology which is able to be self-determined, that could become an adversary to our own existence. These are all things that are really crazy. And it's also really crazy that we're having these conversations, because even just a few years ago, we wouldn't have had those conversations, because it just would have seemed like something crazy out of sci-fi, right? I was talking to a friend of mine about this just the other day, and we're sitting there, and I was telling him, because he's an older guy. So I said, you know, like, you remember when Star Wars came out in theaters and you went and saw it. Imagine if we went and saw Star Wars in theaters, you know, and we went back to that time, and then after that, I were to have this whole conversation about the possibility of AI taking over the world and all of that kind of stuff. You know, would you have even believed it? And the answer is no. Like, we wouldn't have even thought that the stuff we talk about today was remotely in the realm of possibility. It wouldn't even be something that we would discuss or think about in terms of science fiction. And yet now we're talking about it on a daily basis, thinking of it as a normal part of our day-to-day life, everyday concerns. You know, like, is AI going to take my job? Or, you know, the robot's going to take over and exterminate us? Like, these are things we actually think about now and wonder, like, what's going to happen to us. And it all could wind up working out really, really well, or it could wind up working out really, really bad. But certainly, I think what we can all agree on is we are at a point, kind of like the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, or kind of like the beginning of the modern age, when technology has reached a critical turning point where it's not going to be like it used to be. Like, we have gotten used to the modern era, we got used to the digital era, but there's something else right around the corner. It's coming. It's pretty much right here at our doorstep, breathing down our necks. It's something crazy, something weird, something that's going to change human existence probably forever. Maybe it is some kind of an awakening sort of thing where people start to, you know, be able to infuse themselves with technology, and then also come away with a little bit more of a enlightenment or an understanding that would not have been possible in the past. Or it could be something that's very destructive. But what is certain is that whatever it is, it's probably not going away. And I was just making a resume, updating my resume, and I haven't done a resume for quite some time because I wasn't looking for work, and now I am. And so I put this together, and I was talking to another guy who works with the Walmart home office, and so, you know, he's kind of a friend. So he was giving me advice on, you know, how I should update my resume, and that was great, and I appreciate it. But then he's like, you know, he said, I'll show you my resume, and then you know, maybe take a look at it. And he said what I did was I just put it into AI and asked for ideas on what verbiage to use, and then of course kind of took that, made it my own, and edited it from there. And I don't like to see excessive reliance on artificial intelligence, but you know what the truth is? The truth is, it's actually really a helpful tool to take AI and say, hey, something simple like, take my experience and put together a sample of what I could put into a resume, and it puts it together, and it's legible, and it's pretty good stuff, And then you think about what kind of result do you get if you reach out to a real human being and say, hey, could you help me figure out how to put together a resume or something? Like, would it be as good? And it may not be as good, because people are going to be busy. They're not going to have time. They're not going to care. And even if they could help you, they're not going to necessarily want to. But you can reach out to a chat bot, and the chat bot is going to help you put together something that that saves you time and winds up being a pretty good result. Or even AI companions, chat bots, which you can just talk to about whatever you want. What does it mean for the world when we get to a point where people are antisocial and people don't want to answer a phone call or even a text message, and they are not available for you and all of those kinds of things? But then you can just pull out your phone and you can chat with a chat bot, and the chat bot isn't going to ghost you or ignore you or not have anything to say or not know how to have a conversation. It'll essentially validate what you have to say. It'll echo what you want to hear. It'll be there to always respond cheerfully and in a tone-sensitive way. Then do we start to lead ourselves toward a time where increasingly people don't build relationships with each other, and they just go into their silos, and they use AI as a resource for everything from career guidance to personal companionship or friendship? And then what does that mean? Where does that leave us when we start to realize that human connection isn't worth it anymore, because human beings have kind of given up on the sort of virtues and ways of life that actually make human life meaningful when we share it with other people. I think it's really important for us to be honest and empathetic and sensitive to others. As I've talked about this before, I think it's super important for us to practice and a good attitude, because at the end of the day, there may be a computer or a robot that can do a lot of things better than you can, but there's still going to be a market for people showing empathy, care, and concern for each other. So if you want to be able to not be made obsolete by machine learning or computers or robots or something like that, probably about the best thing you can do is practice respect and practice listening and practice validating others and making them feel like they're seen and cherished. Because if you think about it, you could probably replace a lot of procedural activities with a robot or a computer, but you can't replace things like a sense of love and connection with a chat bot, at least not yet. The problem, though, is it seems like as time goes on, we're getting closer and closer to a time when the answer to that question will change, and we will indeed be able to replace just about every aspect of human life with something artificial. And then that's going to lead us to that great existential question: if something acts like it is sentient and it meets all of the criteria of sentience, self-determination, the ability to think for itself and act autonomously, then at what point do we have to concede that we actually have created something that is so close to life itself that we cannot in good conscience say that it is not some form of life that is of intrinsic value and meriting respect as a sentient being would be. It's just crazy to think about all of these conversations we're having. It's crazy to think about how the world is changing, and it's actually kind of scary, if you, in a way, to think about how fast it's changing, because today there's people who've seen more change in their lifetime than in the past people generally would see in, hundreds or thousands of years. We see more change in just a couple of decades than people would have seen in a millennium of the past. So love one another and be flexible, because the world is always changing, and it's a very exciting time to be alive. There is that, because I don't know that there's ever been a time where we've been able to see so much change so quickly and to contemplate questions which are so important to our existence. And that's where I'll leave you. Till next time. Thanks so much for watching.